everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you might be dialing in from around the world. Thank you all for joining us for today's webinar, Healthcare B2B Payment Trends, presented by IT Novarica Group and Zealous. I'm Caitlin Labby, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. We'll be starting the webinar shortly, but first let me cover some quick housekeeping items. Today's webinar will be recorded. A link to view the recording on demand will be available after the session. We will be taking questions at the end of the webinar, so please feel free to submit your questions using the questions feature located in the GoToWebinar toolbar to the right of your screen. It is now my pleasure to introduce today's speakers. Inji Kaya is a strategic advisor on IT Novarica Group's health insurance practice, and she covers healthcare payments, health IT, evolving market trends, and vendor evaluations and their implications for industry stakeholders. Inji brings 10 years experience to IT Novarica Group in advisory research, strategic market insight, and analysis working with financial services, IT service providers, and healthcare industry clients. Erica Baumann serves as Director of IT Novarica Group's commercial banking and payments practice, focusing on payables and receivables technology and solutions. She has over 10 years of experience in the wholesale banking space, bringing expertise from both banking and fintech vendor positions. She has worked extensively with both US and international banks, vendors, and the clients of each to identify market opportunities and implement technology solutions. Last but not least, Matthew Albright is Chief Legislative Affairs Officer for Zealous, a healthcare and financial technology company. He is the host of the Collective Voice of Health IT, a WEDI podcast, and gives a weekly report on healthcare legislation for the RAC Monitor's Monitor Mondays broadcast. He is the author of the book Profits Pending, a critique of intellectual property rights on genetic material, and his writings on healthcare policy and legislation have appeared in multiple industry publications. Matthew considers his greatest achievement to be when his softball team made it into the Guinness Book of World Records. So without further ado, I'll now turn it over to Inji for further introductions and to dive into today's content. Thank you again for joining us, and we hope you enjoy today's webinar. Inji, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Just wanted to kick us off with an agenda of what we'll be covering between Erica, Matthew, and myself for the next 45 or so minutes. This is all about the world of commercial payments and healthcare payments and electronic payments, right? So various flavors you can kind of approach this topic from. So the various flavors that we came up with was to start us off with the current state in electronic payments. I'd like to have Erica weigh in on what she's been seeing on the commercial banking and payment side, and then Matthew and I will offer some comments and thoughts on how things look and have been on the healthcare side. And then we'll talk a little bit about the trials and tribulations. I mean, all of you in the audience, you know, you're in this business, you're dealing with the pros and cons and trials and tribulations of doing this day in and day out. We'd like to kind of bring in some of your voices into the story. And then talk a little bit about, you know, what the benefits are of embracing that shift to electronic payments. Chances are you're all doing something or other. Is there something that could be done a little bit better, a little bit more in a way that's going to give you the results you're looking for? Get into that, and then really talk about, you know, consumer-friendly payments, right? So maybe bringing in our day-to-day experiences, making payments as a consumer. You know, how might that look like in the health world, and as you think about a comprehensive payment strategy. And last but not least, if and when you're in the market looking for a vendor partner to help you figure this out or get you a little bit more embedded in the electronic payment space, what are some considerations you may want to think about or pay attention to when selecting those payment providers or partners?